2019 has been the best year I've had in business so far. Last month, I broke the 5-figure mark for monthly sales, and just last week, I was officially installed as the chair of the board of directors for our Chamber of Commerce here in Indio. And what's cool about that is when my parents saw a picture of me getting installed on Facebook, they sent me this super sweet text where they were saying that they were happy and proud of me, and it made me feel really special. But it definitely was not always like that. And actually for a lot of it, my parents and I were actually just not even talking at all. That's why I wanted to do a video about how I dealt with my parents' disapproval, disdain even, for my decision to embark on my entrepreneurial journey. Not only was there friction and arguing and crying and all of this, but it got to a point where I just stopped talking to them altogether. That's what I wanted to talk about in this video. It might be a little longer just because it's a tough subject and it really hits home for me to talk about how hard it was to do something that was so important to me in my life without their, not only approval, but just their complete disapproval. And to start off, I really want to emphasize how bad it was. Not to, ask for pity, because obviously we're way past that, but just for anyone watching who is in a similar position or is about to embark on an entrepreneurial journey and your parents are completely against it, I just want to paint the picture for you that, how bad it was, because it was really bad. Luckily, I decided to document a lot of my entrepreneurial journey on this YouTube channel, and pretty much every single time you have seen me crying, it's because I had just gotten in a fight with my parents. Every single time we were on the phone, we were in the same room. Any time where there was kind of communication being exchanged, it just was always with friction. It was always with yelling and screaming and crying, and just like, it just was terrible. And obviously everyone's relationships are going to be totally different, but mine got to a point during the pivotal part of my entrepreneurial journey when not only was I just starting, but trying to build a foundation, learning what it meant to be an entrepreneur, trying to make decisions for myself. Like, this is a crucial time, the infancy of starting a business. Like, this is what I was going through. And I tried so hard to explain to them what I was doing so hard. That's why there was so much arguing, was because I wanted them to understand why I was doing this and why I wanted to give myself the chance to do this. The thing that made me so sad was I didn't want to be the estranged daughter that never spoke to her parents. I didn't want that, and especially when it was over something that I cared so much about. It wasn't like, I was intentionally defying them to disappoint them or anything. I just wanted to start my own business, and it's not like it was a bad idea. So that's why I was so sad about it. So anyway, enough with painting the picture. Here are some things that really helped me in a very practical way to continue the journey despite the disapproval I was getting from my parents. Number one, get a mentor. Everyone's entrepreneurial journey is going to be totally unique and completely different from whatever expectations you think you have. It's scary, it's tumultuous, there's a lot on the line, you're risking pretty much everything. You're putting your all into this. So for me, it was so helpful when I actually got a mentor. Luckily, I found Sid Kato, who was my mentor for a lot of the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. And he really became this, not only a father figure, but he was someone that I trusted. He was someone that I looked up to, who had the decades of experience to help me and support me in my goals, and also understood my industry. I can't explain to you how instrumental Sid was for me. I remember there was a time where I called him in the middle of the night because it was the night before my cousin's wedding rehearsal. This was going to be a situation where my family doesn't approve of me and they're pissed. But now my extended family is there, and I'm just gonna be constantly compared to my cousins in the same generation. I'm totally single, not getting married. I'm not making, a certain amount of money like the other cousins in my same age demographic. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm in this entrepreneur thing that no one understands, and I just was so panicked. And I called him and I said, I don't know how I'm gonna go. I kind of just don't wanna go because I just wanna avoid that. But I felt like that would have been even worse because then I just would have never heard the end of it. So I'll never forget, the advice he gave me that night was go to the wedding rehearsal with your biggest vlogging rig. Use your biggest camera, use your biggest microphone, use your biggest tripod, and just roll up in there and do your thing. When I am just completely lost in vlogging and doing my YouTube thing, it's so hard for an observer not to admire or at least be curious about what I'm doing. So instead of kind of being ashamed of it and like hiding it and like, being scared of vlogging in public and all of that, just own it, like completely step in there and own it. And I did. I rolled up with my vlogging rig, the biggest one. I don't even use that vlogging rig, but I wanted to make it look as big as possible. And I strolled up into the church with it and walked up into the altar and everything. And of course, everyone was just like, wow, what is this? What are you doing? Like, this is really cool. That's what you do now. And it was totally the opposite of what probably would have happened if I was like all scared and just like, oh yeah, like I'm not good enough compared to everyone here and stuff like that. Who would I have gone to in that situation? I'm so thankful that I had a mentor I could trust in Sid to be able to confide in and get that advice from. Otherwise, I don't even know what I would have done. Number 2, this is just straight up real talk. Remember your place. You are not going to win here, and you might not like me saying that. I know if I had told myself this back in the day, I would have not liked me saying that. But straight up, like, there's nothing that you are going to say that is going to convince your parents otherwise. You're never going to outgrow the role of child, ever. Or maybe not so much that. It's more so that your parents will never outgrow their roles as parents. They're always going to be mom and dad, which by default, that means you're always going to be a child, which was so frustrating to me. I wish I could have a conversation where we just spoke as equals, but they're so invested in you and you are completely competing against decades of life experience, generational differences, cultural differences even, because my parents immigrated here from the Philippines where financial stability is like the paramount thing in life. Forget happiness. So to even begin to argue with that is just a losing battle. But here's the thing. You do not need their approval. You don't need their permission. You don't need their validation. You don't need their understanding. All of that doesn't make it easier. And I specifically remember coming to this realization because it just occurred to me one day, like, why am I putting so much time and effort and stress into trying to get them to understand what I'm doing? Because even if they did, even if they understood, even if they gave me their approval and they were like, super excited for me and super supportive, like, how does that change my to-do list? How does that make anything easier? Who still has to go back and make the videos, figure out all of this stuff, actually try to get new clients, do the client work, like all of that is still just as hard. It's still going to take just as much time, and getting their approval doesn't make nothing easier. So I'm not saying to give up on your relationship with your parents, but for me, I had to kind of weigh out the short-term versus the long-term gains. And it was very interesting for me to do this at this point in my life when I was trying to be when I was trying to be better at decision making as an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, you cannot be emotional about making business decisions, because then it's going to be impossible. You really have to kind of disengage yourself and weigh everything as black and white as possible. And it was weird to do this with these two people that I care about. When I tried approaching it this way, just very black and white, like, look, I could spend all this time fighting a losing battle, or I could just work on my business and get it to a point where they get it. That just seems so much easier for everyone involved. And so that's what I ended up doing. Number 3, friction is rooted in fear. I really had to consciously remind myself of this because, when we were fighting, when like things are being said that we probably regretted, and there's a lot of like things that seem malicious, and there's anger and it's heated and there's tension and all of these things. There's a lot of like negative emotion because of my entrepreneurial decision. But I know that when it comes down to it, all of it was just rooted in fear, right? I am jumping headfirst into complete uncertainty, they would be idiots to not worry about me. They would honestly, it would be cold of them to not worry. Of course they're gonna worry because they care about me more than anything else in the world. They moved their entire lives here to America for me and my brother, and they dedicated everything. Like, everything was for their children, and I get that. And then here was their child just like throwing all of their plans away so that I could just go do my own thing. And it seemed really selfish, but I just kept holding on to the fact that I am not stupid. I'm not doing something that that maybe I don't understand how I'm gonna get there, and there is a lot of uncertainty, but I know that I am good at what I do. I know that, and I never second guessed that. So anyway, just being aware that all of this friction was rooted in fear just kind of made it easier for me to swallow and deal with. Is like, they care. That's why it's hard. Number 4, speak their language. My goal isn't to just throw my entire career away to do whatever I want and just sit there and not do anything. I'm on a mission to exchange my expertise for money, and I wanted to do that in my way, doing the thing that I loved. And I just figured that what parent, my parents, anybody's parents, what parent is going to argue with you making at least the same amount of money that you would in a traditional job doing the thing that you love? That doesn't make, why would they get mad at that, right? Because your goal is to eventually get there. Yeah, there's going to be uncertainty until you get there, but if you are determined and you're dedicated, you're going to get there, and what parent is going to argue with that? This is why it's crucial for you to understand that you're arguing with these key generational differences where a previous generation did not have the luxury or opportunity to factor in happiness like we do today. It was, you get a job and you stay in that job for decades because financial stability, and that's it. It doesn't matter whether you like that job, whether it gives you fulfillment, none of that is something, that's silly. That's not even something, if I were to tell my parents that, they would laugh at me because that's just not the choice they ever had. That was never on the table. But the thing is, it's on our table. It is a choice that we have, which is why I'm so passionate about digital literacy, because that's what these tools allow us to do. So anyway, I could definitely speak to the fact that now that I am in a position where I'm making more than I did in my traditional job, where there's months where I make more than Tom, now they get it. Now they're just like, oh, we're so supportive, we're so happy for you. Of course, because that's all they've ever wanted, was that they could have peace of mind and know that their kid's gonna be okay because she can support herself. And lastly, number 5, spend time with like-minded people. Especially if you're in a situation where you're still living at home with your parents, or you have this relationship where you're constantly checking in with them, or even maybe it's not even parents, but you're still surrounded by a lot of friends and coworkers and whomever that are in these roles of employees, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with employee versus entrepreneur, but there's something about the camaraderie of hanging out with other people who know exactly what you're going through, even though they have a completely different business, even though they're in a completely different industry. Just, being able to connect on the fact that we don't have a steady paycheck. We have to go out and actually do the work to get our own clients. We have to figure out health insurance and setting up a website and all of that. All of those issues that we go through as entrepreneurs, it's so important to be able to lean on other people who have gone through that. Having a supportive network of other entrepreneurs really gave me a sense of pride that I didn't have, because in my life, all the way up until the point of becoming an entrepreneur, it's there was this set of standards of success. And when I made the switch to begin my entrepreneurial journey, based on these standards of success, I was completely failing, and so I never felt good enough. I never felt like I was doing the right thing. And that's not the mind space that you want to be in when you're trying to set up your own business and trying to make an impact and trying to create something out of nothing. That's why being surrounded by other people who are doing that, who are trying to create something out of nothing, look at what they're doing. You admire that, but you're also part of that. And that's where you get that sense of pride and fulfillment. And it's so motivating in a time where everything is like stressful. So I know this was a longer video, but I did want to kind of just talk about my journey with my parents, because we are in a place where we're closer than ever. And you know, I'm so happy to talk to them. We talk like almost every day, and they're so proud of me. And I never, like, honestly, I never thought I would have this relationship with my parents, because we just never had this relationship ever. It was always like me getting in trouble, me being scolded, me not being good enough, me doing everything wrong. And now I'm actually making them proud, doing the thing that I love doing because I'm good at it, you know, and it's the best feeling in the world. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't stick it out, you know, if I didn't just kind of make the decision to walk away for a little bit. It wasn't permanently, I wasn't giving up on them, but just focusing on my business and building it up to a point where I was speaking their language, aka dollar signs. And then they got it. They were like, okay, cool, tell us all about YouTube, because now we get it. Now, if you're at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey and you do not yet have a mentor, check out this vlog where I talk about how I found my first mentor, Sid Kato.